We're checking in with former New York Giants linebacker Jonathan Casillas to get his takes on the direction of the New York Giants roster. That discussion's coming your way next here on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode of the Locked On Giants podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com today to get started. Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, credentialed member of the New York Giants media for Locked On, as well as for New York Giants on SI, which is where you can find all my written work. And as always, we welcome on in our Blue Crew community members, our everydayers, our newcomers, and everybody in between. We thank you for spending part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And on today's show, I'm pleased to welcome in one of my absolute favorite people in the whole wide world. You know him. Those of you who are watching the video, Jonathan Casillas, ex-New York Giants linebacker, ex-captain, two-time Super Bowl champ, and just a super swell individual. Jonathan, my friend, good to see you.
Same here, but you're calling me ex-Giant like it's not once a Giant, always a Giant. Come on, Patty.
Oh, okay. My bad. It's Monday. Give me a break. He's always a Giant, so it's going to be a Giant in everybody's hearts.
Always good to see you, Pat.
Good to see you as well. All right, Giant fans, today we're going to talk about the state of the Giants roster, the Giants coming off the draft a few weeks ago, some undrafted free agents, what the rookies are up against. Jonathan's had a whole lot of experience in that area, obviously. And Jonathan, I think I'd like to start with the quarterback situation now. You were at rookie minicamp this weekend. You had a chance to see Jackson Dart. A lot of people are just, very encouraged by what they saw from Jackson Dart. But, really, there was no 11 on 11. There was really no pass rush. What, though, can we take from the performance Jackson Dart put on that is positive, and what do we still need to see from him?
Well, when it comes to situations like a rookie minicamp, like these guys are coming in and, their eyes are all big, their heads on a swivel, and it's a very vanilla offense or defense that these guys are running. So they just want to be able to see the natural tools and ability and also the intangibles that these players have and possess. So for me, I was looking at them away from the field. When we went into the cafeteria, I kept on peeking over at the table. It was him, Abdul Carter, a couple other rookies that were there. And I just kind of watched them interact and how they were interacting with the staff, how they were interacting with the lunch people, the various Giant staff that walked in and out of the cafeteria, as it is on any given, weekend or day that, the players are in the building. And I love what I saw from him, very engaging, very energetic. He had a little swag to him. He had his hat on and he had a sweatsuit on and, he looked very comfortable. And that's what I like to see. And of course, he looked comfortable on the field. There's no pass rush. So him holding on the ball, that was my one thing, like holding the ball kind of long. But when there's no pass rush and you're just given as much time as possible and no one's saying you have to get the ball out, that might happen, especially with the rookie who's really learning how to play quarterback at this level and learning that timing is a huge thing in the NFL, which I'm sure he'll do. But it was good to see all the rookies. It was good to see Jackson Dart, up close and personal, not as tall as I thought he would be for some reason. I don't know. I thought he was like 6'6" or something, but he's not as tall as I thought he would be, but he looks good. He looks nice and stout, strong, throws a good ball. And I think everything else that we need to see from him, we will see in the next upcoming few weeks with more live action, with the veterans being there and him working with, guys with a little bit more experience in the NFL.
Jonathan, what does it say about Jackson Dart that he was able to complete passes, even though there was no pass rush, but he was basically throwing to guys he had never thrown before, with one exception, that being Juice Wells?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, like I said, I don't want to take too much stock in the rookie minicamp because everything's so vanilla, and these defensive backs, no offense to any of those guys, but you had how many draft picks this year? 7 draft picks this year, and then You got your preferred free agents and your free agents that were signed. Basically everybody else were just there for rookie minicamp. So, these guys that he was throwing against, these defensive backs, these linebackers, these guys that were in the passing windows, a lot of these guys are not going to be in the NFL. So I don't want to judge him on what I saw. I didn't really see too much, but it's good to see the confidence, like I said earlier, in the guy that is a new face here. And, when you're a first round draft pick, all the attention's on you, and when they trade up to get you, you're definitely going to get some attention. But the great thing about it is, Patty, and I know we're probably going to talk about this a little more, is that there's really no pressure on him. Cam Ward's the number 1 overall pick. They're going to play him. He has all the pressure in the world. And it's kind of a rough situation to be in for a guy like Cam Ward, because you're a leader. Like, once you're the quarterback of any franchise on any level, you're the leader of the team. And you're asking for a guy, he might not be as young as other rookies coming into the league, but you're still young. You're green, and you're still trying to learn how to be a rookie when you have to lead a team of men that's been around the league 10 plus years, 8 plus years, guys that are vested, guys that have family members that depend on them, guys that have businesses, guys that has foundations, right? All of these things, these guys are pros at, and you got a young kid coming in to lead you. Jackson Dart doesn't have that pressure, so he has Russell Wilson, he has Jameis Winston, one guy won a Super Bowl. One guy is a guy that's getting a lot of scrutiny throughout his whole entire career, but he still stands tall. And whenever they call on his name, you're going to get Jameis Winston, which you love to have to learn from. So I love the situation that Jackson Dart is coming into. It is kind of no pressure whatsoever on him, but he's definitely learning, I think, from a really good, solid starter in Russell Wilson. So I really like the opportunity that's in front of him.
Jonathan, you know as well as I do, there's no substitute for live reps. That being said, once we get into the regular season, coaching may not be able to spend as much time with Jackson Dart as maybe they are now. That being said, what criteria do you think they look for to say, okay, you know what, this kid's ready to eventually go in there if we need him to?
Well, when you're in the classroom, when you're off the field and you're in the classroom, and nobody's in the classroom more than quarterbacks, right? Because defensive guys, linebackers, defensive end, the skill positions on offense, receivers, tight ends, and running backs, we're all in special teams meetings, right? Those quarterbacks are meeting, they're meeting. So I think his performance in the meetings, the ability to ask questions, Patty, I always say there's a such thing as stupid questions. Stupid questions are asked from guys that really aren't paying attention and they aren't locked in. So you're asking questions that the coach probably just answered, or somebody that they just asked the same question. But you can have really smart questions that kind of challenge the coaches or whoever's presenting the data that you're asking the question to say, oh, this guy is not only just paying attention, he's thinking outside the box. He's thinking down the road. So I think his ability to ask great questions in these meetings, be engaged, be able to articulate the snap count, the play call, whatever the case is, and be able to understand, because a lot of the questions are going to go to the younger guys. Russell, not that he knows everything that he's doing. He's coming into a new offense. But usually in these situations, a lot of the younger guys get the questions from the coaches. They ask, what do you see on this read? What's the good read here? What's your second read here? If we get this coverage, where do you go with the ball? So Jackson Dart can stay on top of those things. Now, it would not only make a great impression on the coaches, but it'll be good for his development as a young quarterback.
Brian Dable talks about the plan for Jackson Dart, but he doesn't give the details. And from what I could see, the plan is to basically let him sit this year and develop. But is there more to this plan as far as, where they want him to be, milestones that you think make the most sense for where they want him to be? Or is it just a case of just let him develop organically?
Yeah, I think there's really no better situation from a guy that, look, the Giants came back into the first round to grab him. And the reason why they did that, because they see him as the long-term answer. And long-term answers, that doesn't mean you have to be great in your first year. Jaden Daniels, he's one of how many quarterbacks that's been drafted in the first round that's had that type of success that early in his career, right? Most other guys don't have that success. So the numbers are stacked up against the guys that are playing as first-round draft picks in their rookie year. So for me, I love the situation, like I said, that he's coming into. I don't know what typical milestones that those guys get. But like I said, the classroom work for him is going to be ideal. Those 3 preseason games, it's 3, right? Not 2, right? 3 preseason, right? So those 3 preseason games, I don't want to get ahead of myself. Those 3 preseason games that Dart will play in, those will be crucial for him. And again, even in those games, like he's going to see pretty much vanilla defenses. He's going to see some guys that are going to be in the NFL. Maybe they're starters, but most of those guys are going to be backups. So it's good to see, can he grasp the concept that we've been teaching him over the last few months since rookie minicamp, OTAs, and training camp has transpired. Where do we see the progress? Is he making the right reads? Is he throwing the ball on time, in rhythm? Is he layering the ball? So a lot of the physical tools that we've seen from him in college and the things that he did in Ole Miss, does that transfer over, and can he handle kind of the spotlight? Because no matter where you're at, when they draft you and you get in the game in preseason, the fans are very aware of who's playing. And even if he might start a game for preseason, and the fans are going to anticipate. So that's the most pressure I feel like he's going to have all year. So I would like to see, let's see how he plays in those positions where he actually is going to get an opportunity to throw the football to NFL players.
Hey, Giant fans, the NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have way more opportunities than ever to play smart and win big. If you've got a read on who's heating up, why not back it up with a same game parlay? How could a $200 in bonus bets add to the excitement if your first $5 bet hits? With FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com today and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, now, Jonathan, let's talk about some of the other draft picks. A guy that I fell in love with, if you will, just because I like his blue-collar nature and, just that can-do, was Cam Skattebo. This is a guy you look at, he's very, compact, but he's very, very, what's the word I want? I don't want to say thick because I don't know if that's the best word, but he's solid. He's solid. He's solid. That's a good word. Okay. How does he potentially complement Tyrone Tracy? Do you think the Giants have their new thunder and lightning combo?
Well, I don't want to count out Devin Singletary. A lot of people kind of skip him out. Like there can't be a 3-man rotation at that position. And he's a veteran in the room, but he's the guy that Tracy learns from. He's the guy that's Cam Skattebo is going to learn from. Of course, he can pick things up from Tracy, but when those questions are being asked and those young guys can't answer it, Devin Singletary is the guy that's going to be able to help those guys out. And Devin Singletary's been a guy that averaged 4 yards his entire career. Last year took a little step back, taking the back seat to Tyrone Tracy, but Singletary's a great guy. He's going to be the guy that helps both of those young guys along. And I think he adds a great combination to it. You could call it thunder or lightning or whatever the case is. Tyrone Tracy, he was a receiver not too long ago, and you saw flashes of that, the way he kind of skates to the outside, the way he moves in traffic. You can see those tendencies. Cam Skattebo is not that guy. I don't think he's ever played receiver in his entire life. He might have played guard. He might have played nose tackle. But he's the guy. He's the bruiser guy. He's the enforcer guy. He's the guy on 3rd and 1 you're going to get that ball to. And his passing, the situations of football on 3rd downs, that's what he flourishes at. He has great hands. He has a great awareness on how to close the space between himself and a linebacker or a safety in coverage and get open. He does a great job at that. So I think he's going to add tremendous value to not only just the running game for the New York Football Giants, but also to the passing game.
Is it fair to say that the hardest thing for a running back coming from college to the NFL is pass pro?
Yeah, I think so, because it's not just him. He has to be in in full understanding of what the offensive line is doing. More importantly, he has to be in full understanding of what the defense is doing and what they're presenting to him. And defenses nowadays, of course, preseason is very vanilla, not too much masking going on. It's pretty much standard. You running maybe 5 or 6 different defenses. But like when you hit that season and they're literally disguising every play to look the same way, but they're sending different guys from all over, like that's where it really comes into effect if you have a guy that's effective at pass pro. It's not so easy as getting out and pass routes because you only basically have either one route or an option route, which is basically you have a choice of doing 1 to 3 different things, and even in the running situation, those runs, you have a certain track that you have to hit. And these guys that play running back, that's what they're good at. They're good at hitting that track and being able to let their athleticism and what makes them dynamite, what makes them amazing to get into the NFL, and the natural ability comes out. Now, pass pro, Patty, that's when you start having to think and process information. So when guys, they start, moving a little slow, or they're not really, as developed in the pass game, is because they're trying to process information. And that's something that sometimes some of these college guys never was asked to do. So I think, seeing how he does in the pass pro situation, and if he come flourish on that, he could be a great, amazing third down back for the Giants, not just getting out on routes, but in the passing protection game as well.
All right, before we get to the defense, I want to ask you about Marcus Mbow. Now, obviously, we're not going to be able to tell a whole lot until the pads go on in the summer. But were you kind of surprised, like I was, that they started working him at tackle? I thought maybe he would be more of an interior type of guy. And I just want to get your take on that. And what do you see from him, having looked at his film?
I haven't, to be honest, I haven't really watched this film too much, and I'm always on the record of saying I don't really watch college at all. So I haven't really watched him. I heard him speaking the other day. I loved his answers. I love his maturity. So what I've seen, but I don't mind him playing interior or outside. I don't know exactly his skill set whatsoever. I'm just looking at the Giants roster, right? Jermaine Illuminor at right tackle. And then, of course, Andrew Thomas, the all-pro at left tackle. And I hate to say this, but Andrew Thomas has had some injury concerns the last few years. He has not done well in staying healthy. So I think having a guy that can play outside and possibly be that swing tackle is very crucial for the New York Football Giants. At the end of the day, Patty, the Giants are led by destructive and dominant defense. That's the culture that the Giants always have. I don't care who's the head coach. I don't care who's in the building, who's playing what position. That's the Giants' MO. On defense and offensively, the Giants are led by a dominant offensive line. It's been a while since the Giants have gotten here. And I think that's why you've seen some of the struggles from the Giants, because the offensive line has not been as solid as it has been in those Super Bowl years, right? With the Snees and Noah Harris, that, the Rich Soibers, all of those guys that were big, strong, dominant guys that literally kicked ass. I'm sorry, Patty, if I had to curse, but I can't say it no better way. They literally did that on a day in and day out basis. And the Giants have gotten away from that. And I think every time Andrew Thomas goes down, no matter how the offensive line was doing, the production drastically goes down. The mistakes come up, penalties come up, the amount of sacks come up. And I think they need a great alternative if Andrew Thomas goes down, or Jermaine Illuminor goes down, or if anybody on the interior line goes down. He's a young guy. I want to see what he's all about. The saddest part about this, though, is that we won't really be able to get to see him until training camp. OTAs really doesn't do anything for those interior guys, those non-skill position players. So it's going to be a while before I actually get to see him. And I'll take a look back at Purdue film and try to get a good eye on him. But again, these are going against non-NFL guys. Maybe against 2 or 3 or 4 guys throughout the whole entire season. And that's maybe 4 or 5 different reps throughout the whole entire season that we can actually see him against NFL-type talent. So it'll be a while to see, but I love the versatility if he can be able to do it, because I heard him say he's willing to play any position, whatever the Giants ask him to do, and I think that's very crucial for a young offensive lineman.
Reminds me of David Deal, who played every position except center when he was with the team.
Yeah, David Deal looks like a linebacker now, too, so he's a long ways away from that to that David Deal.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Jonathan, let's talk about the defense if we could. I want to start on the defensive line before we get to Abdul Carter. Obviously, Darius Alexander is the crown jewel, if you will, of the defensive line. A young guy, versatile guy. Where is his best fit on that defensive line?
Just man, I got to talk to him a little bit. He's a very mature guy. He's really not that young, Patty. He's a little bit of an older rookie. He has a kid that's I think in either kindergarten or first grade. So he's a man. He's not coming in the NFL as a young boy or inexperienced boy. Like he has experience in life, right? And I think that'll add to his development and his character playing along the defensive line. And I think he'll fit great right next to Dexter Lawrence. Dexter Lawrence is a nose or one or whatever technique. He's always inside of the guards, anywhere from outside of the guards to inside of the guards. And I see Darius Alexander fitting in that 3 technique, possibly a 4-eye, on the inside eye of the tackle. But I see him being right next to Dexter, fitting in that 3. And then Dexter, he commands a double team every game. If not, that's how those 9 sacks happen. Even some of those sacks, he was doubled. So when you have a guy like that who is the focal point, and you bring in a guy like Abdul Carter, Brian Burns last year, Kayvon Thibodeau still there, and then you add a piece like Darius Alexander, who has a knack for getting to the quarterback, I think that is a great recipe for that, that culture that I talked about earlier, that dominant defense. The Giants need a great pass rusher up front, and you need great pass rushers on the outside. Not only do you have a dominant interior guy, now you're adding a guy who has been compared to Leonard Williams. And we saw his impact on the Giants when he was paired next to Dexter Lawrence. And the Giants decided not to play him on the outside, but to play him on the interior at that 3 technique. And you saw people just couldn't block both of those guys, Dexter and Cat. So now you got another guy who's very similar to him, a lot younger than Cat was when he played for the Giants. And I think he has an opportunity to flourish with all of those personnel problems that the Giants would present to a lot of teams.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, it's in Darius Alexander, in his game, do you see a little bit of Leonard Williams in there? Because really, ever since Leonard Williams was traded, not that Dexter has been bad. He certainly hasn't. He's probably the best interior defensive lineman in the league, but he can't do it himself. And like you said, he draws so much attention now because he hasn't really had a solid running mate alongside of him. And I was just wondering, if you saw a little bit of Leonard Williams' game in terms of the quickness, when you were watching the drills, did you see that in Darius Alexander's game?
Yeah, I did. But like I said, he's younger than Leonard was. Leonard was, what was he in his 8th, 9th year when he got to the Giants? Something like that. I might be wrong, but he was a lot older than he was. So now you get a more youthful guy, at that position, and I like what I saw in the drills. He looked athletic, and he is a stout guy. He's a guy that will be able to move offensive linemen, I think, on a consistent basis. And with all the attention that Dexter will get and has to get, unless he would just destroy your offense, I think he's going to free him up and get a lot of one-on-ones. And we'll see how he does. I would like to see if that athleticism that he has showcased in college and in his, I guess, preseason of the free season out there in rookie minicamp, that he has shown that translates over to being an effective 3 technique.
All right, now let's talk Abdul Carter, linebacker, which is right up your wheelhouse. Abdul Carter, for the first couple of years, inside linebacker. Last year, did more outside linebacker type of work. For the people who maybe aren't as familiar with the differences between the 2 positions, other than where you line up, what are some of the key things that, make an inside linebacker's job a little bit different than an outside linebacker's job?
Well, a lot of times in this type of outside linebacker is more of a, I would say, quote unquote pass rusher, because I played outside my whole life, but that was in a 4-3 off the ball type situation. And Abdul Carter is really not going to be off the ball. He's the best when he's on the ball, right in front of the tackle, right outside the tight end, somewhere in that situation where he is going to be able to get on the edge of some of these guys and be able to create havoc from the outside. The main difference, I think, in one of those interior linebackers, let's call them middle linebackers, is number one, you have to be a great communicator. You're the guy that's communicating the fronts. You're communicating the shifts. You're communicating the down and distances. You're communicating the coverages. And sometimes that, if you have to process a lot of information, that can slow some people down, and that's why it's very difficult to find a great little linebacker, which the Giants actually have two. McFadden has made his strides the last 3 years, and Bobby Okereke is the incumbent, kind of all-star player, that the Giants have at middle linebacker. And they have those two guys who have excelled at being great communicators, being great ball disruptors. Now, Abdul Carter, I don't think he's going to have to worry about that at all, and the good thing about some of these pass rushers, right, they don't have to process that much information. You could just pin their ears back and they can go ahead and get after the quarterback. And the league now, it's definitely developed into more of a passing situation, a passing-oriented league. And if you look at this division alone, right, you got Jalen Hurts, who's leading, I think, the only probably run-oriented offense in the entire division. Then you look at Dak Prescott and Jaden Daniels, those guys are going to have the ball in their hands, 60% of the time. And you want a guy to be able to cause havoc and have those guys stepping up in the pocket. And that's what Abdul Carter presents. He causes havoc. When you look on the outside, you have to understand, I guess, where number 51 is. I think that's the number that he's going with this year. You have to know where he's at all times. Combine him with Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau. I mean, this is what we've all wanted. This is all we've all been kind of waiting for from the Giants defense to where they can become dominant. Last year they weren't able to catch their stride. And early in the year, they did, I think, some great things leading the league in sacks. Dexter Lawrence having 9 sacks, I think, in the first 11 to 12 games, leading the league, which is crazy. But now they're going to be able to do that with a lot more help for their offense. A lot of time it's not always about how dominant the defense is if the offense is compatible or comprehensive at all. And I'm sorry to say, being second to last on total offense, points per game, that's not being really comprehensive and not really giving your chance for the defense to actually have success late in games.
Jonathan, for some reason, a lot of people want to get rid of Kayvon Thibodeau because they feel that Abdul Carter is a better version of him. I don't necessarily agree about getting rid of Kayvon Thibodeau, but I do want to ask you, what is the way to getting all three of those guys on the field? Because, it looks like they all kind of have done the same thing or excelled in the same areas. So how creative does defensive coordinator Shane Bowen need to get all three of them on the field, and can it be done?
Well, I think it goes to what I was saying earlier about the offense, right? The offense being good and being able to, have a lead, right? The Giants played from behind almost every single game this past year, almost every single game the past 2 years. So the Giants never really been in a situation where they can have those, fourth quarters where they're just attacking the offensive line for a whole quarter. They never really had that situation. And when you do have that situation, you need more than just 2 pass rushers, Patty. You need more than that, right? And you look back at those Giants, those last 2 Giants Super Bowls. I mean, how many pass rushers on those squads, right? You got everywhere from Michael Straton, Justin Tuck, Amin Yura, JPP, right? Tollefson, like all of those guys, they were all pass rushers. Those guys, all guys that, rushed the passer. Sometimes they weren't on the field at the same time. Sometimes they were, but if you got a guy that's rushing the passer for a whole, 2-minute drill, and all of a sudden the ball goes out of bounds, the clock stops, you want to be able to get in a fresh body or have all 3 of them on the field at the same time with Dexter Lawrence. How much of a nightmare would that be, Pat? You got, a first round top 6 draft pick, a number 3 draft pick, and then you got one of the better players, one of the better edge players in the league, and Brian Burns solidified, and then you have the best interior lineman. I mean, that's scary, and I think keeping Kayvon Thibodeau as that extra element. And I know he's gotten some slack the last few years, but he's a guy that's played 90% of snaps basically throughout his entire career. Now you'll be able to take that number down, and I think the production per play will go up because there's been games where Kayvon Thibodeau has kind of put a donut out in the statistic category, but he's looked good, but he didn't create stats. which I think if you limit the number of reps that he's getting, I think the value per play will go up tremendously.
All right, now, Jonathan, I want to get a couple more in with you, and I want to go back to the offense because this one's kind of a head scratcher for me, and maybe you can kind of make some sense out of it for me. So the Giants are running it back with Malik Neighbors. They brought back, Darius Slayton. They got Wan'Dale Robinson. We still don't know what Jalen Hyatt can be. That's another topic, but the Giants did not draft a receiver, but they seem to have brought in a lot of tallish receivers into camp. It's almost like they're looking for that guy that they weren't able to draft. Can you just kind of, help me sort out that whole, position group? What are they looking to do? Are they looking to maybe cut down on the number of targets for Wan'Dale, who had, I think, something like 90? And how would they kind of, in your opinion, how would this kind of work as far as, Malik's going to get most of the targets. So, how would it kind of distribute?
Well, you got to think, who's the quarterback, right? You look at the quarterback, Russell Wilson, who has, a tremendous amount of success in the NFL. What is he known for, right? They call it the moon ball, right? It's really just a high arcing deep ball, right? And no one throws it better than him in the NFL. He's been known for that. He's trademarked that, right? And you get a guy like Jalen Hyatt, who, if you remember, when the Giants signed Russell Wilson, he was a guy that he mentioned. Russell Wilson knew the whole roster like the back of his hand, and he brought up Jalen Hyatt, and he brought up that he's happy to be able to work with a guy like that. And I think that shows a lot of promise in what Russell Wilson is as a quarterback. He's a guy that's going to give his receiver chances. That's something that I've always kind of been a little critical about Daniel Jones. He didn't give his receivers a lot of chances down the field. And in 2022, I think he was a terrific quarterback between the hashes. But in order for you to have success in an offense, I think you have to be able to scare a defense and you have to threaten them. And you know what threatens them? When you have two guys on the outside with speed and you have a quarterback that's willing to throw the ball. Not that he can throw the ball, that he's willing to do it. Now that presents a lot of opportunities for those, what they call 50-50 opportunities with these receivers. And Jalen Hyatt, he's a guy that had 5 touchdowns against Alabama, and he's not too far from that. He should be better than that. I think he's better than what he's put on film the last couple of years. And I think with having Russell at quarterback, giving him the opportunities and him having the confidence going into games, I think that would just present a better atmosphere for him. And I think it'll be an atmosphere for him to thrive in.
So, just sticking with Hyatt for a second, you think maybe because of the quarterback play, that's what's kind of held him back a little bit?
I mean, the quarterback play for the Giants have held the whole entire team back. Patty, 16 points a game last year. And that was one game where Drew Lock shot the number up because he scored 45 points. Like if it wasn't for that game, like the Giants have been dead last in points. Quarterback play is everything in the NFL. And I wasn't the only one that said that. The coaches said that, the general manager said it, everybody that is of power in the Giants organization has spoken about the quarterback play and how it has been suffering the last few years. And I think if you can, figure that part out, that's a good start in actually winning the game in the division. A lot of people are saying, hey, well, how are we going to do this year? For me, let's just start winning games in our division. Because if you don't know, I know you know, Patty, but if you don't remember, the 2 representatives in the NFC Championship came from this division. And it was a team that the Giants used to have their number of, which is the Commanders. The Giants didn't win a game in the division last year, Patty. How do you win a game in a division? You have to have a quarterback play that's comparable to the other quarterbacks in the division. And the Giants just haven't been able to do that. So I think with this, level of talent and this level of, I think urgency that the Giants have, I think they have a lot better chance of getting that good quarterback play this year.
All right, Jonathan, final question for you. Were there any undrafted free agents or tryout guys that, made you take note?
I don't know too many of them. I know the one kid that came from Ole Miss that have a great relationship with Jackson Dart. I don't know none of their names though, Patty.
Well,
I don't know none of their names. I'm waiting on training camp so you can come up to me and say, hey, Jonathan, do you see any of these undrafted free agents that caught your eye quite yet? I don't know none of their names. And no offense, Patty, I'm not trying to learn them yet either. You know what I mean? I want to see which guy, but I want to be able to see them and say, who's that guy? You know what I mean? Who's that guy? And then I go ahead and do my research on it. You know what I mean? Like for me, I want to be able to do that. And me and Paul Latino, we were sitting down with an undrafted rookie out of Idaho, the kid out of Idaho. We were sitting down with him. Great young man, left a great impression on me and Paul Latino. And I'm sitting there afterwards and I'm DMing him and I said, hey man, it was nice to meet you. You know, best of luck to you. And they cut him. You know, so it's like, it's really hard to try to go in and learn these guys when you just don't know if they're going to be on the roster tomorrow, you know, and that's the sad truth of the NFL.
All right, Jonathan, before we let you go, you have some youth camps coming up. Tell everybody about those camps where they can get more information and register.
So, Patty, I want to make an announcement because it just came to in my mailbox, literally the mailbox, not the inbox, my mailbox. I am officially the Jonathan Casillas Forward Progress Foundation, which is kind of still in the works, but we have got our paperwork and we are a nonprofit. We are an official 501c3 charitable entity. So I'm so excited to announce that. You're the first person that got that because I just got the mail the other day. And we're in the process of like opening an account. Like we're literally at the ground stages of it. But what we're not at the ground stages of is my camp. We're on the 10th year, Patty, of my camp. And it would have been the 12th year if we didn't have to take a couple of years off of COVID and all of those restrictions that were put on for COVID. We're on our 10th year, and I'm so excited about it. It's called the Jonathan Casillas Forward Progress Camp, and it's an all-inclusive camp. When I say all-inclusive, I'm talking about, it's grades 5th to 12th graders, but I'm talking about we got girls. We're highlighting girls flag football this year. We got kids that are in self-contained classes. We're taking all kids, not just kids that play football, not just kids that are athletes. We're taking all kids because it's not about the football stuff. What we do in my Forward Progress Camp, we give these kids 8 life skills classes in the morning. So when they come in, we give them a nice rah-rah speech, but it's not about playing football. It's about being engaged, being active in these meetings in these basically sessions, these life skills sessions that you're about to go into, and we had New Brunswick firefighters that come in, New Brunswick police officers that come in and teach these classes. Jonathan Vilma, as you know, Fox Sports guy I won a Super Bowl with, University of Miami legend, Saints legend, Jets defensive rookie of the year. He teaches public speaking class every single year. He's our incumbent teacher, our resident teacher, have you say. And he's a guy that comes in and he does a great job with the kids. And I got Bobby Okereke. I sent him an invite. He said he'll be able to come. I think he might come on the 7th. And I told him, I said, Bobby, I don't want you to come take pictures or sign autographs. This is not that type of camp. I want you to come and I want you to coach up my kids. I want you to be there with them. I want you encouraging them. I want you inspiring them. I want you motivating them. My camp is not like a typical football camp, and I'm not trying to, point fingers at nobody, but it is what it is. Some of these companies put on camps and they bring in a high profile athlete and that's all they're doing is just kind of showing up, shaking hands, signing autographs, and that make kids feel good. But I want guys that's going to come in and teach these kids. And that's what we've been doing, Patty, for 10 years. Now, I'm excited to announce this year is our first year we're doing the Jonathan Casillas Forward Progress Elite Camp, right? And I know it's getting like with the words and stuff like that, but for the last few years, I feel like we've been not servicing the more experienced football player in our camps. Now, what they've been doing, these, juniors and seniors, they've been doing a great job in coaching up the younger kids, coaching up the less experienced people, coaching up the special needs kids that need assistance, even running a 40-yard dash. They've been knocking it out the park, Patty. So I didn't want to change that. So that is the 10-year camp that we've been doing. Now, the elite camp, Patty, we're working with a company called Sumer Sports. They're basically going to come in, create recruiting profiles for all participants in the elite camp. We're going to have 7 to 10 kids where we're going to give a full and thorough evaluation. And how they're doing that, they're sending in a scout to monitor these kids' times, their biometrics. I'm talking about 40-yard, 3-cone, broad jump, vertical jump, and they're going to do their biometric and skill positions. So we're literally going to service these older, more experienced kids that I feel like I want to say failing to serve because everybody gets something out of it. We're just doing a better job at paying attention to what they needed. And so now we're going to be able to give them that in the second day. The first day, which is our 10th camp, is June 7th. The second day, which is the elite camp, is June 8th. And that is for anybody that in 8th grade to 12th grade with at least 1 year football experience. And they're really going to have an all-out great, I guess, upgraded experience because they're going to get the competitive one-on-ones. We're going to have competitive 7-on-7s. And when the kids come in, Patty, we've been doing this for 10 years. They get free shirt, free shorts, free backpack, a slag, wristbands, water bottles, notebooks, and we promoting the life skills classes just like any camp promotes the outside 7-on-7, 1-on-1 stuff. We're promoting it equally. And we're actually putting more emphasis on it because we're all about promoting the student athlete where student comes first before athlete. So that's my pitch. Anybody can register on the forwardprogresscamp.com for either camp. It's both, all of those camps, all of the information is on my website, and you can see pictures from past camps. And I'm so excited that we're actually getting this second day off the ground. And I'm excited about actually being a non-profit. I'm so excited about that, Patty.
That is amazing. And the camps are going to be here in Jersey, right? Central Jersey?
Yes. I'm sorry. New Brunswick Middle School. So my old high school, New Brunswick High School, is now the middle school. The classes take place in New Brunswick Middle School. And all of the field activities is literally right across the street where we won a state championship back in 2004 at Memorial Stadium.
All right, my friend, I appreciate you so much. Congratulations on becoming a nonprofit. You're doing great things, and I'm always, always honored to have you on and to call you a friend. You've just been so good to me over the years, and it just means a lot to me. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for the opportunity, Patty. It's always a pleasure talking to you.
All right, folks, that's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Giants. Keep it here all week long. We still have the schedule release coming up. We'll have reactions on that and plenty more here on the Locked On Giants podcast. For Jonathan Casillas, I'm Patricia Traina. We will see you tomorrow, Giant fans.